In 1935, Jung treated a woman, a textbook empath, who'd spent 40 years being the nice one. Never said no, always accommodated, prided herself on never getting angry. Then she collapsed. Severe depression, chronic pain, couldn't get out of bed. Jung told her something that changed everything. Your body is screaming the anger your mouth won't speak. You think suppressing anger makes you peaceful, but it's making you sick. Empaths don't find peace by avoiding anger. They find it by finally allowing what they've been taught is unforgivable. If you're an empath who prides yourself on never getting angry, who feels guilty the rare times frustration surfaces, who believes staying calm and nice is the path to inner peace, Jung discovered the opposite is true. Peace comes only after you stop betraying yourself through endless niceness. And this woman's transformation reveals the 5 stages empaths must pass through to transform suppressed rage into genuine peace. The woman who walked into Jung's Zurich practice in 1935, we'll call her Margaret, was 43 years old and had been bedridden for 6 months. Severe depression, chronic migraines, digestive issues, insomnia. Doctors found nothing physically wrong. She sat across from Jung, apologizing for taking up his time. "I'm sorry to bother you with this. I know you see people with real problems. Mine is probably just weakness." Even in crisis, she was apologizing. Jung asked her to describe her life. The picture that emerged: family peacemaker, the friend everyone called in crisis, the coworker who stayed late to help others, never married, lived with her aging mother, cared for her without complaint. "Do you ever get angry?" She looked shocked. "No, I mean, sometimes I feel frustrated, but I don't do anger. That's not who I am. Anger is ugly. It hurts people. And yet you're in constant pain. Your body hurts, your head aches, you can't sleep, you can't eat. Tell me what happens to anger that's never expressed." Silence, then quietly. "I don't understand." Your body understands. It's been trying to tell you for years. The collapse. When suppressed anger finally breaks the system, forcing empaths to face what they've been avoiding for decades. Margaret had learned early that anger was unacceptable. Her father had been volatile, explosive rages, throwing things, terrorizing the family. Her mother had responded with perfect calm, never raising her voice, absorbing his fury with silence. Margaret watched and learned. Anger destroys, calmness saves. Nice people don't get angry, so she became the nice one. When her brother took credit for her work, she smiled. When friends canceled plans last minute, she said, "No problem." When her mother criticized her daily, she responded with patience. But suppressed anger doesn't disappear. It turns inward. Research on emotional suppression by Dr. James Pennebaker shows that chronic suppression of negative emotions correlates with increased rates of depression, chronic pain, autoimmune disorders, and cardiovascular disease. The body keeps the score. Margaret's migraines weren't random. They intensified every Sunday, the day her mother criticized her most. Her digestive issues flared after interactions with her demanding brother. Her insomnia worsened when she'd said yes to something she desperately wanted to refuse. Your body is screaming the anger your mouth won't speak. Every headache is suppressed rage. Every stomach pain is swallowed resentment. Every sleepless night is your soul refusing to rest while you betray it. Margaret started crying. "But if I let myself get angry, I'll become like my father. I'll hurt people." No, that's the wounded child's logic. Your father's rage was unconscious, possessive, destructive. What I'm speaking of is conscious anger, sacred anger, the kind that protects boundaries, demands truth. That anger doesn't destroy, it creates. It creates peace. The collapse happens when the empath can no longer sustain the split, performing peace externally while raging internally. The body revolts, depression sets in, physical illness manifests. Jung documented this pattern across dozens of patients, the nicest people, the most accommodating, the ones who never complained. They were the sickest because they'd betrayed themselves so thoroughly that their bodies had to force the reckoning their minds wouldn't allow. You believe suppressing anger makes you peaceful, but look at you. You're not peaceful. You're sick. Real peace doesn't come from suppression. It comes from integration. Margaret looked terrified. I don't know how to be angry without being destructive. Then you'll learn, because the alternative is this. Jung gestured to her collapsed state. Your body has already chosen. Now your mind must catch up. Empaths don't find peace by avoiding anger. They lose peace by avoiding anger, and they'll never reclaim it until they stop treating anger as the enemy. If your body is screaming what your mouth won't speak, comment, "My body is screaming," because recognizing the collapse is crucial. But the second stage reveals what happens when empaths finally allow the forbidden emotion to surface. Margaret's voice cut through the dining room. Stop. Her mother froze mid-sentence, fork suspended, eyes wide. In 43 years, Margaret had never raised her voice, not once. I won't listen to this anymore. You criticize everything I do, my job, my appearance, my life choices, and I'm done. I'm done pretending it doesn't hurt. I'm done smiling through it. Stop. The silence that followed felt like the air had been sucked from the room. Her mother's face shifted through shock, hurt, fury. Then she stood, left the room. 3 days of silence followed. Month 4. Margaret sat in Jung's office, hands trembling. I yelled at my mother. I've never done that, never. The look on her face, she was so shocked, so hurt. I'm a terrible person. What did she say? She left. She hasn't spoken to me in 3 days. And how do you feel? Margaret paused. Terrified, guilty, like I destroyed something. Then quietly. But also lighter, like I can breathe for the first time in months. The eruption, when suppressed anger finally breaks through the empath's defenses. Not gradually, not gently, but like a dam bursting. The eruption isn't pretty. It's messy, disproportionate, terrifying. Because anger that's been suppressed for decades doesn't emerge as calm assertion. It explodes. Margaret's one moment of raising her voice felt to her like violence. To her mother, who'd never heard Margaret express anger, it was shocking. The family system had organized around Margaret's niceness. When she broke that pattern, the system destabilized. The eruption is necessary, but dangerous. Necessary because the suppressed anger must be acknowledged. Dangerous because unconscious anger acts out rather than acts consciously. He taught her to distinguish between 2 types. Reactive rage, unconscious, destructive, the wounded child lashing out, and conscious anger, grounded, clear, the adult self setting boundaries. Margaret's eruption was reactive rage. Decades of swallowed resentment exploding in one moment. Her mother's criticism was the trigger, but the intensity came from 40 years of unspoken fury. That moment when decades of niceness finally breaks. If you've experienced it, you're not alone. Comment what it felt like when you finally erupted, because the eruption proves anger exists. But the work is learning to express it consciously. Studies on assertiveness show that people who've suppressed anger for years often swing too far into aggression because they have no middle ground. The work is finding the middle. Neither suppression nor explosion, but clear, firm expression. Over the following weeks, Margaret learned to recognize anger earlier before it built to eruption levels. Where do you feel it in your body? My chest? It gets tight, hot. That's your signal. When you feel that tightness, that's your body saying a boundary has been crossed. Something needs to be addressed. If you address it, then it stays small, manageable. If you suppress it, it builds until it erupts. She practiced. Her mother criticized her outfit. Margaret felt the tightness. Instead of smiling and saying nothing, she paused. Mother, that comment hurt. I need you to stop criticizing how I look. Her mother was shocked, but Margaret didn't explode. She stated a boundary calmly. It feels unnatural, like I'm being mean. That's because you've confused kindness with self-erasure. Real kindness includes boundaries. What you've been doing isn't kindness. It's self-betrayal disguised as virtue. Audre Lorde, poet and activist, wrote about the uses of anger. Focused with precision, anger becomes fuel for change rather than destructive force. Margaret was discovering this truth. The eruption was messy, but it cracked the facade. It proved anger wouldn't kill her or destroy her relationships. It proved she could survive being seen as not nice. But eruption is only the second stage. The third reveals the terrifying work of meeting what's been buried for 40 years. Because the eruption proves anger exists, but the third stage requires facing why it's been suppressed for so long. And that confrontation changes everything. She was 7 years old, watching her father rage, dinner plate smashing against the wall, her mother's face perfectly calm, voice soft, never showing fear. When he finally passed out, Margaret asked, "Mommy, why didn't you yell back?" Her mother knelt down, smoothed Margaret's hair. "Because anger is ugly, sweetheart. Nice people don't get angry, they stay calm. That's how you survive." 7-year-old Margaret made a vow that night. "I will never be angry like father. I will be nice like mother. That's how you survive." 40 years later, that 7-year-old was still running the show. Month 8. Margaret sat in Jung's office, frustrated. "I'm expressing anger now. I'm setting boundaries, but I feel worse, not better. Guilty constantly, like I'm doing something wrong. Everyone's so uncomfortable with me now." You have become someone else, and the part of you that built its entire identity on being nice is terrified. You must face the wounded child who learned that anger equals danger. Jung gave her an assignment. Write a letter to that 7-year-old. Margaret wrote, "Dear little Margaret, I know you're scared. I know you saw Father's anger and decided never to be like him. You made yourself nice to survive. And it worked. You kept us safe. But we're not in danger anymore. Father is gone. The people in our life now aren't violent, and our anger isn't Father's rage. Our anger is our voice saying, 'This boundary matters. This truth matters. I matter. You don't have to be nice forever. You can rest now. I'll protect us differently.'" She sobbed, reading it aloud in Jung's office. "I don't know how to stop being nice. It's all I know how to be." The reckoning, facing the original wound that taught empaths anger, was unforgivable, not intellectually understanding it, but emotionally meeting the terrified child who made the decision to be nice forever. Research on attachment trauma by Dr. Pete Walker identifies the fawn response, the tendency to appease and please as a survival strategy in threatening environments. Children who grow up with volatile parents often develop this response. It keeps them safe as children, but as adults, it keeps them imprisoned in endless self-betrayal. Margaret's nice self wasn't evil. It was a protector trying to keep her safe from a danger that no longer existed. The reckoning also requires facing the guilt. Because empaths who start expressing anger feel guilty constantly. Not just guilty for specific actions, but guilty for existing as someone who's no longer endlessly accommodating. Every boundary felt selfish. Every expression of anger felt cruel. "Whose voice is saying you're selfish?" Margaret closed her eyes. "My mother's. She always said, 'Don't be selfish. Think of others. Nice girls don't complain.'" So the guilt isn't yours. It's your mother's voice internalized. Your mother's fear of anger installed in you as guilt, but it's not truth. It's conditioning. Over months, Margaret practiced separating her guilt from truth. When guilt arose, she asked, "Is this guilt about actual harm I've caused, or is this guilt about violating old rules that no longer serve me?" Most of the time, it was the latter. Harriet Tubman was called dangerous for her anger at injustice. But that anger fueled liberation, not just for herself, but for hundreds. The reckoning demands the same of empaths. Stop suppressing your anger to make others comfortable. Your comfort matters, too. By month 10, Margaret had integrated a crucial truth. I'm not responsible for managing other people's discomfort with my boundaries. If my mother is uncomfortable with me saying no, that's her work, not mine. My job is to be honest. This realization was liberation and terror because it meant Margaret could no longer hide behind niceness. She had to stand in her truth and let others react however they would react. The 7-year-old who decided to be nice forever, she's in you too. And she needs to hear, you're safe now, the danger is over. Because the reckoning is brutal but necessary. Only after facing the original wound can empaths move into the 4th stage where anger transforms from enemy into ally. Month 14. Margaret walked into Jung's office and sat down without apologizing. Jung noticed immediately. You didn't say sorry, she smiled. I know. I noticed too. Something had shifted. She no longer entered spaces apologizing for existing. She sat with a groundedness Jung hadn't seen before. I'm not fighting my anger anymore. It's still there, but it doesn't feel like an enemy. It feels like information, like a signal that something matters to me. The integration when anger transforms from destructive force into authentic power. Not suppressed, not erupting, but integrated as part of the whole self. Month 14 staff meeting. Her colleague interrupts her mid-sentence again. Chest tightness, heat. But this time, instead of smiling and letting it happen, Margaret pauses, holds up her hand. Let me finish my thought. Clear, calm. The colleague stops. Margaret continues. No eruption, just boundary. Month 15. Her mother criticizes her job choice, the old tightness in her chest. But now, Margaret recognizes it immediately. Anger's early warning system. Mother, I need you to stop criticizing my career. I'm happy with my work. Her mother huffs. But Margaret doesn't chase the approval, doesn't apologize, just states the truth. Month 16. Her brother takes credit for her idea in a meeting. Rage rises. The old Margaret would have smiled. Eruption phase, Margaret might have snapped. Publicly. Integrated, Margaret waits. After the meeting, she pulls him aside. That idea was mine. When you presented it as yours, I felt erased. I need you to acknowledge my contributions. Direct, clear, no attack, just truth. He's defensive, but ultimately apologizes. Month 18, Sunday dinner. Her mother starts. You're wasting your life. You should have married. Margaret interrupts. I won't accept this anymore. Her mother leaves the room, and Margaret feels peaceful, not guilty, not anxious. Peaceful because she honored herself. The integration required learning to locate anger in the body before it escalates. Tightness in chest, heat in face, tension in jaw. These became early warnings. Anger is present. Something needs attention. Address it early. It stays small. Suppress it. It builds to explosion. She learned to distinguish between reactive rage, the wounded child, disproportionate intensity, desire to hurt back, and conscious anger, the adult self, clear, firm, focused on boundary, no desire to destroy. She learned to use anger as fuel for change, not weapon for harm. When a colleague repeatedly interrupted her, Margaret used the anger as fuel for a clear conversation. I notice you interrupt me frequently. It makes me feel dismissed. I need you to let me finish. Research on assertiveness confirms that people who learn to express anger clearly, direct, non-attacking, report higher relationship satisfaction and lower anxiety than those who suppress or explode. Carl Rogers called this congruence, when inner experience matches outer expression. Incongruent people, inner rage, outer smile, experience chronic anxiety. Congruent people, inner truth, outer truth, experience peace. Margaret had become congruent. She felt angry when boundaries were crossed, and she expressed it clearly. She felt joy when honored, and she expressed that too. She no longer performed emotions she didn't feel. She lived what was true. The integration also changed her relationships. Some people left. Those who'd benefited from her self-erasure couldn't tolerate her boundaries, but others deepened. Those who wanted real connection, not convenient service. Her mother still struggled, but Margaret no longer managed her mother's discomfort. "I love you, Mother, but I won't sacrifice my well-being for your comfort. You can adjust or you can be upset. That's your choice." Firm, loving, boundaried. Which integration practice will you try this week? Noticing anger in your body before it escalates, distinguishing reactive rage from conscious anger, or using anger as fuel for clear boundaries. Comment which one you're committing to, because integration creates capacity for authentic connection. But the fifth stage reveals the unexpected gift that comes when empaths finally stop betraying themselves. Month 20. Margaret's final session with Jung. She walked in, shoulders relaxed, jaw soft, eyes clear. The tension that had characterized her for nearly 2 years was gone. "How are you?" "Peaceful, actually peaceful, not performing peace, not suppressing to create false calm, just at rest." "Tell me about this peace." "It's different than I imagined. I used to think peace meant never feeling upset, never causing discomfort, never making waves. I thought nice people were peaceful people, but I was never peaceful. I was exhausted, resentful, sick," she continued. "Now I get angry. I set boundaries. People are sometimes uncomfortable, and I feel peaceful because I'm not at war with myself anymore. I'm not performing one thing while feeling another. I'm just whole." The peace, genuine peace, comes not from suppressing anger, but from integrating it into authentic wholeness. Not absence of conflict, but presence of congruence. Last week my mother criticized me. I felt angry. I told her calmly I wouldn't accept criticism anymore. She got upset and left. And I felt peaceful, not guilty, not anxious, peaceful because I honored myself. Studies on psychological well-being show that people who score highest on autonomy, living by internal values rather than external approval, report the highest life satisfaction. Margaret had developed this. She lived by her truth rather than others' expectations. Research reveals that people high in authenticity report feeling at peace with themselves even during external conflict, because the internal conflict, the war between true self and performed self, has ended. Margaret's peace didn't mean her life was conflict-free. Her mother still sometimes criticized. Her brother still sometimes overstepped, but Margaret no longer absorbed these as evidence of her failure. She responded with boundaries, clear communication, and self-respect. Then she let go of the outcome. "I can't control whether people like my boundaries. I can only control whether I honor them. And when I honor them, I feel peaceful. When I betray them to keep others comfortable, I feel sick. It's that simple." The peace also brought physical healing. Margaret's migraines, which had plagued her for decades, became rare. Her digestive issues resolved. She slept through the night. The chronic pain vanished. When you stop forcing your body to hold suppressed emotion, it heals. But the deepest peace came from something else. "I used to need people to approve of me to feel okay. Every interaction was a test. Will they still like me? Now I don't need their approval. I approve of myself, and that makes everything lighter." She'd stopped outsourcing her worth. She no longer needed to be nice to everyone to feel valuable. She could be authentic, sometimes kind, sometimes firm, sometimes angry, sometimes joyful, and her worth remained constant. Comment which stage you're in: collapse, eruption, reckoning, integration, or peace. Your recognition helps others identify their own journey. 3 months after ending therapy, a letter arrived at Jung's office. "Dear Dr. Jung, I'm writing to tell you I'm getting married. At 45, I thought I'd missed my chance, but I met someone who loves me. Not the nice version I performed, but the real version, the one who gets angry, sets boundaries, says no, takes space. He calls me authentic, strong, real. I used to think I had to be endlessly nice to be loved. Now I know I had to be endlessly honest to be loved genuinely. Thank you for teaching me that peace doesn't come from suppressing anger. It comes from honoring truth. And truth includes the full range of being human, including anger. With gratitude, Margaret, the 5 stages summarized. Stage 1, the collapse. Suppressed anger destroys the body and mind, forcing empaths to face what they've been avoiding. Stage 2, the eruption. Anger breaks through the defenses messily and disproportionately, proving it exists and won't stay buried. Stage 3, the reckoning. Facing the wounded child who learned anger equals danger, dismantling the core identity built on being nice. Stage 4, the integration. Transforming anger from enemy into information, learning to express it clearly without suppression or destruction. Stage 5, the peace. Discovering genuine peace through wholeness. Living in alignment where inner truth matches outer expression. If you're an empath who's been taught that staying nice and calm is the path to peace, Jung's work reveals the opposite. Peace comes after you stop betraying yourself not through perfect calm, but through authentic expression. Not by never getting angry, but by honoring anger when it arises and expressing it clearly. Your body knows this already. The exhaustion, the chronic pain, the mysterious ailments. They're your body screaming what your mouth won't speak. And they won't stop until you finally allow what you've been taught is unforgivable. Your anger. Anger isn't the opposite of peace. Suppression is the opposite of peace. Integration is the path to peace. Subscribe for more explorations of Jungian psychology and emotional integration. And remember Jung's teaching, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you can't become whole by cutting off the parts society calls unacceptable. You must integrate them. And for empaths, that means finally, after decades of nice, embracing the anger that's been trying to set you free. You're not broken, you're suppressed. And peace waits on the other side of integration. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.